if we got to a point in society where things were basically okay with the racial issues, and most people weren't all that focused on it, and we weren't going around every day talking about racism, and if we got to that point, well, these people would be out of a job. And more importantly, it's a tool of control and manipulation.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. As you can see, we are on Zuby's channel, and his guest is Matt Walsh, who has famously released, produced and starred in 2 movies. The latest one called Am I Racist? Or Am I a Racist? Can't remember. Which is a documentary, and it hilariously exposes and satires and lampoons the race hustling industry. I've done several videos about that film. I still haven't actually seen the whole film yet. I'm embarrassed about that. But from all the clips I've seen, it's hilarious. It also did very well in the cinemas, in the box office. So today he's being interviewed by Zuby, who I believe is a musician, kind of a conservative sort of guy. I guess he's also a commentator now. I haven't been following him, but I've seen his name pop up a few times over the past couple of years. And they're talking about various things. But in this clip that we're going to look at, they are, as you can hear, talking about the race grift, the race hustle.
The whole transgender ideology. But when it comes to this line of thinking and belief, what do you think it is that's so dangerous about it?
I think take your pick, really. I think that with this in particular, you have people that are intentionally trying to, and successfully, in fact, succeeding in stoking racial guilt, resentment, suspicion, unhealthy obsessions. That's what they want to do because they profit off of it. And there's a lot of influence and power to be found in it. They have a vested interest in creating that sort of environment in society. I think if we got to a point where, I'm not saying we're going to get to some post-racial utopia. That's not going to happen. And so we have to be realists about it. And you're always going to have, things like racism are always going to exist in the world. Because we're human beings. But if we got to a point in society where things were basically okay with the racial issues, and most people weren't all that focused on it, and we weren't going around every day talking about racism, and if we got to that point, well, these people would be out of a job. And more importantly, it's a tool of control and manipulation that's been taken away from them. And so they don't want that. Which is why I think, if you were to track sort of race relations in America, it seems like there was it's kind of a progression. Things are improving, through the 20th century to get to the 90s. 90s, not perfect. I mean, you had OJ, you had race riots in LA, but it really seemed like things were getting better into the early 2000s. And then you get to Obama.
This might be a bit of a hot take, but I don't think things were getting better, actually. I hear that a lot. Oh, it's true. I was in high school in the early 80s and college in the mid 80s, started working in the 90s. And of course I was growing up in the 70s, but were things better? I don't know if they were better. I honestly think, and this can be seen in real life, people self-segregate, whether it's, by ethnic group, let's say. They tend to self-segregate, or by race, by racial groups, if you prefer, which is sort of a superset of ethnic groups. So, that's just the way it is, or it's like Muhammad Ali famously said on an interview on British TV, with who was it with? Michael Parkinson. Blackbirds stay with the blackbirds, bluebirds stay with the bluebirds. That's the way God intended it, and I agree. Frankly, it's not segregation is basically natural. of course there's going to be mixing between groups of people and all that. Nobody's saying that there shouldn't be, but people just naturally self-segregate, and cultures have formed in the United States. That's the way it is. So, what's better or what's worse? Frankly, I think the introduction of the Civil Rights Act actually made things worse. I think it was better before. Now, you say, well, better in what way? Are you kidding? There was Jim Crow. I'm talking the United States here, of course, not the situation in Europe. There was Jim Crow. There was legal segregation. Yeah, but as say Thomas Sowell has written about extensively, black communities were much healthier. Yeah, their families were intact, and they followed civilized norms, Western norms of society. They had their own culture. Not saying that, of course they did, but they were a healthier community in general. Whereas in the wake of civil rights and the welfare state, and the rise of other things, other social factors like promoting, basically promoting the promotion of thug culture and all that, it's a disaster. Obviously not all blacks in the United States are in a disastrous state, but a significant proportion of them are. And I think they would have been better during the pre-1965 era, frankly. Hot take for the day. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let's carry on with this clip.
And I'm certainly not the only person who's noticed that right around that time is where things started to go back the other direction. I mean, it wasn't long after Obama's into his second term when BLM popped up and all these things. Yeah. We started hearing about these alleged police brutality cases all the time, whereas before it was like every once in a while you'd hear. And I
think a lot of it is the rise of smartphones and social media as well, which came around that time. So everyone walking around with a camera and a video camera with them at all times, and then all of these things being on camera in many cases. I think that seeing something on video versus just hearing a story hits very differently for people in psychology. And I think it makes them feel like, almost like they witnessed it themselves.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, this is, just an article that I'm reading.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think that does play into it. You're right. Well, anytime you're dissecting any kind of cultural change or shift, it's impossible to overstate the influence of social media and smartphones. I mean, it just changed everything. It changes the way people interact. It changes everything about being a human in the world. I mean, because this is a tangent, but it's a technology that really has no analog. There's nothing that existed like it before, because you could always say, well, cars changed the world. They did. But before that, there were horses, and cars are just a faster version of horses than they are. But with social media and smartphones, you can't really look back at something else and say, well, this is just a new version of that. It's really not. I mean, you had phones before, but you had nothing at all comparable to carrying something around in your pocket that gave you instant access to everything in the world, essentially. So anyway, that's part of it. But I also think that the Obama years contributed to this, because I think what happened was, you had these race hustlers who talked about systemic racism in America. America's systemically racist. Then we elect a black president, and to any normal, rational person, you would look at that as evidence. Now, I was not an Obama supporter, but you would at least think that, okay, well, we elected a black president. That's pretty good evidence that systemic racism is not an issue we have to worry about anymore. A black guy made it all the way to the top of the system. So clearly, this is systemic racism was not something we have to think about. Which, of course, it is evidence of that. But the race hustlers said, well, but we can't lose that. We can't lose that cudgel to beat people with. And so they had to actually ramp up their race hustling, in order to convince people that, no, yeah, we have a black president, but no, America's still racist. So they had to desperately grasp for other examples. And And so that's where BLM comes from, and that's when we started hearing about all these police brutality cases that were not police, Michael Brown and those sorts of things.
Yeah, of course, I think Matt Walsh is right here. Well, I suppose, I mean, the race hustle grift has been going on for decades. We all know about Al Sharpton and what's the other guy? I can't remember his name now. But anyway, it's been going on for decades. But yeah, it's clearly ramped up in the last 8 to 10 years, something like that. And of course, it's more visible, as they were saying, with the rise of social media and the rise of smartphones. People can create whole stories out of nothing with just short, edited videos that don't show the full context of a situation, and claim, that someone has just been, they can expose, I say between quotes, someone for being racist, as if that's a crime. It's not a crime to be racist. Sorry, it's just not. At least not in the United States. It might be in Belgium, where I live, in some Western European countries. Or maybe not a crime to be racist, but to express your racist convictions in public or on the internet. But, I mean, people prefer their own. It doesn't mean they hate other groups of people necessarily, or not at all, or hardly at all. That's not really the issue. The issue is they prefer their own, and they prefer their country remain predominantly of their own people. That's just natural. But anyway, yeah, it's an interesting talk. So you can find this easily on Zuby's channel if you want to see the whole interview. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.